I want to welcome to the studio this half hour, though, Superintendent of the Lakeview Schools, Dave Peterson, is with us this half hour. Dave, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for the time today, sir.
Oh, no problem.
We're going to talk soon about what's coming up on May 3rd, which in the blink of an eye here will be a month away, which is an important day for Lakeview, and we'll talk about that. Wanted to give you a chance, though, to talk a little bit about what an active week this has been. Started with Lakeview this week, early Monday morning, when you were trying to decide whether or not to have school.
Yes, that's not the good part of the job.
Right.
But it's whenever a threat comes in all school districts, you got to take it very serious. You don't know where it's coming from. In the situations locally, it's just students that just don't think about what the consequences are. The second thing is, as I mentioned to you earlier, is the number of man hours that the police department has to put into this and pull off other jobs is just significant. And then bringing in dogs that can sniff bombs and just the whole 9 yards. It mobilizes just tremendous resources to try to figure out what's going on.
Absolutely. When you have a situation potentially like that, this is the response that has to take place. It's huge.
It's huge. The good thing is we've been through it enough that we have a very precise protocol to follow, and we do that just to ensure the safety of all students. And the other thing, sometimes people wonder why we close schools so quickly, and it's you just can't take a chance.
Mm-hmm.
You just never know, so you have to do the cautious thing and close school, figure things out, and then go forward.
You talked about the situation being such that those involved don't realize what the response is or what the consequences are. Is that clearer now, you think, these days?
I don't know, because we seem to have these rash of these things. You know, it happens one place and there's a copycat, and it happens again. And I don't think they realize that they destroy their public school career. That's, they will not go to, in our case, Lakeview Schools will not let that student enroll.
Wow.
So it's significant.
Okay, so think about that. And, from our position, you stand here as a broadcaster and say, how much about this do you want to talk about? But in order to not glamorize it or try and promote it, but yet that which you know to be your protocol and understanding the decisions you make, these are important things to understand. So, you went through your process, which you say is clearly articulated, and at some point you realize that this is not an actual threat, but you got to go a long way down the pike before you realize that.
Oh, sure. I mean, every building has to be checked out, both inside and outside. Again, the more credible the threat, the more, I shouldn't even say it that way. More times than not, law enforcement chooses to bring the dogs in that sniff out bombs. Mm-hmm. The prosecutor takes it very serious. I'm not going to speak for them, but more times than not, they are prosecuted to the fullest. So there's a felony on young people's records, so it is significant.
So as students came back to school on Tuesday in Lakeview, I presume there were lots of discussions about how these things happen and what the consequences are.
Lots of discussion, and also we have to be, we spend more time dealing with the fear, because it's, there's been enough school shootings, and then you got the bombings in Brussels. You have all this terror. And it does create fear, and that fear is real, and our kids feel it, and our parents feel it, and we have to deal with that.
We're talking with Dave Peterson from Lakeview Schools. In a moment, they'll be asking you to support them at the ballot box in about a month, and we'll understand what that's about coming up in just a second on WBCK 815 WBCK. We're talking about schools today. Dave Peterson is here from Lakeview Schools. So there's a bond request coming in May, and Lakeview voters have to sort that out, right?
Correct. Yes, we have two proposals. The main proposal is a $30 million proposal. It's approximately 1.6 mils, and that primarily is really focused at our 4 grade schools. It starts with heat and air, and it goes from there. It's if you figure those buildings, Prairie View's in the 30s, was built in the 30s. Mm-hmm. The other 3 buildings, Westlake, Riverside, and Mingus Brook, were built in the 50s with some additions in the 60s. So they're old buildings, and they're sound buildings. They're structurally sound, but it's just like your home. If your home was built in the 50s, it's time to update.
Yeah, that's right. We know what it's like being homeowners. The windows get drafty. The climate control system has to be repaired or replaced. These are typical things.
Yeah, the conversation started about 2 years ago because all 4 buildings have steam heat. It's the old steam heat.
Oh, sure.
Very difficult to work with, hard to get parts for the boilers. We had to close school one day. And the folks that come to work on our boilers said basically we have to turn them on October and turn them off in April and not cycle down on weekends and evenings because that's hard on the boilers. So we're wasting a lot of energy because we don't have things that we can really run efficiently. So that started the conversation. Then it gets into windows. It goes back to what we talked before. Is a large part of the bond issue is on keeping our kids safe. Our 4 grade schools, you can walk right in, right to the classrooms. We have no way to keep people away from the classrooms. So we will refigure the front entrances, the office areas, on that sort of thing. So safety's huge. Safety glass or film to make sure that you can't just shoot a glass window out to get entrance.
Wow.
Cameras, intercom, a lot of safety features, and that's in all buildings, not just the 4 elementaries.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, this is reality today, isn't it?
It is reality today. Yes, it is.
So what kind of expenditure are we talking about for the average homeowner in the district?
We have a brochure that we will be. They're out right now, but we will go door to door, make sure everyone has that. But on the brochure, there is a website to where you can go and actually figure your tax, and the website is called www. Then it's PFM Tax Calc CALK/Lakeview. And you put you put your data in there as far as what you make, what your taxes are. Maybe you have some kind of a circuit breaker. It'll figure your tax down to the penny.
Wow, nice.
To answer your question, for an average size home, we tell people that someplace around $140 a year. So it is significant.
Okay.
We're asking a lot out of our taxpayers.
Mm-hmm. When's the last time you had a request like that? It's been a while?
The last one we passed was in 2002 for the high school.
It is a while.
And then we failed one in 2008 for the elementaries. So it's been a while.
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up because if things are not approved, it poses a quandary because your problems don't go away, your challenges don't go away, and a voter may say no to you, but they're going to get asked again eventually.
Exactly. Your point's well taken. Is our restrooms are still dated, our electrical's still dated, our lighting is dated, our windows are dated. Talked about the steam heat, so it's all dated, and it needs addressed.
Mm-hmm. These are typical challenges for districts, I presume.
It's the way state funding is. What we receive per student is really not. Is think of it that again going back to the family. Is it what you make and what you take home? You can do small things to keep your house right, but if you got to do big things, you go out and get a second mortgage.
Yeah,
and it's the same. It's the same thing for a school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a situation that is pretty typical, but there's no real other way to do this, is there? I mean, this is the way it is.
No, and Lakeview is a very frugal district. A lot of districts will go out and raise bond money to do things like technology, buses. We don't do that. We use our operating funds to keep our bus fleet current. We've used our operating funds that by next fall we will be 1-to-1 technology, grades 5 through 8. That's pretty rare for a district. Most districts use bond money to do that. So, we stretch our money as far as we can stretch it.
Dave Peterson's here from Lakeview Schools. Lakeview folks are going to be asked to support a bond request in about a month. We'll talk more about that coming up in just a second on WBCK 822 WBCK. Dave Peterson with us, Superintendent at Lakeview Schools. You mentioned, Dave, your last question for voters was in 2008. Was that right?
Yeah, 2008.
Yeah, and this is different from that, isn't it? This request, it was turned down, and so that forces you to go and try and figure out what a compromise might be, and the result of that is what you're asking on May 3rd.
Right. We spent a lot of time actually talking to our residents. We had 8 community meetings. We had a survey that reached about 600 people, and out of that, like all things, we started talking about heat and air, which is about $12 million. It grew. We talked about the old proposal, where it's 2 brand new buildings, which would have been about $60 million, and then we came back to reality and focused on this $30 million package. And then the second question also came out of that because a lot of folks said, let's just stick to the basics. Upgrading the auditorium, some thought wasn't a basic. Putting synthetic turf on the football field, making a multi-purpose field, some felt wasn't basics. So that's why there's 2 proposals.
Okay. So this is the compromise that we were talking about. You know, wouldn't it be nice if some new business model came along where, I don't know, districts could rent buildings instead of own them and thus remove themselves from having to maintain them? Is there anything like that out there that you've heard about, or any kind of innovations in the way school districts situate themselves and operate buildings?
Boy, I haven't heard that. There is talk recently about Proposal A is 22 years old.
Yeah.
And it seems to be somewhat archaic. It did take local control away from localities and took it to the state. So there is some talk about relooking at that. But as far as building buildings, no, I have not heard anything.
Boy, it just seems like that is a huge weight on the shoulders of a district, is to maintain all these buildings. Certainly Battle Creek has dealt with that, and other districts as well. This gets expensive. You know all about it.
Yes, it does. What I can say as far as specific for Lakeview School District is the history of Lakeview is we go to our voters very rarely for these type of things. Yeah. Some districts, you notice, go every couple of years for one thing or another. This is a long-term plan. It will get us to the year 2032 when the high school bond expires. The one thing not in this is roofs, because our roofs still have life to them. Mm-hmm. So, 5, 7, 10 years, we may have to come back for a very modest sinking fund or something. But other than that, this really is a long-range plan to get us to 2032, where well over 4 mills drop off the levy, and then we could do significant and not raise taxes.
Right. So. Yeah, you have to be sort of cautious about this in terms of not wanting to fatigue the voters by asking them too many times.
Exactly.
I presume that's a factor in your thinking.
Yeah, and that's the thought. Our last successful vote was 14 years ago. The next significant vote will be 16 years from now, I would assume. I can't speak for future boards and superintendents. Mm-hmm. Like I said, a possible very, very modest thing for roofs, possibly.
Okay. So let's say this passes on May 3rd. How quickly can you start working?
Unfortunately, there's a lot of work to do before you see a shovel in the ground. So if it passes May 3rd, then drawings get drawn. They talk to teachers and administrators and parents as far as what the final product should look like. Drawings won't get done until the fall, and then you start letting out bids. So really, shovel ready won't be till next spring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you hate to start doing that now if you don't know you can do it.
Right.
So you just got to wait and follow that process. Now, what if you're unsuccessful with this? Is there a safety net contingency plan you're thinking about?
I always hate to answer those kind of questions, but you asked it, so I'll answer it. Again, we're putting all our effort into passing it. We think it's a good plan. But with your question, we have to come back and do something for our heat. We are wasting so much energy with our heat. We got to come back quickly for that. What that looks like and what might be tagged onto it, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But we would come back quickly to try to deal with the climate.
At least that.
Yeah. And then I hope that safety would also be two non-negotiables that we could get our community to support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, when you talk about running the climate control in the building on days when school isn't in session and not being able to scale that back a little bit, I mean, we all do that at home. And not there, you say, gee, maybe I ought to program my thermostat back a little bit. We can all relate to that idea, and the efficiency issue is huge. I mean, if you think about power plants and heating plants now that you put in your home and the efficiency therein, imagine the lack of efficiency in something as old as what we're talking about here.
Oh, exactly. It's hard to give you a hard figure, but we know we're well over $100,000 of waste. Just because we can't do that.
Yeah.
I could try to sensationalize it and tell you it's more. I think it is more, but I know conservatively it's well over $100,000 that we waste in cost for that. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So if you can save that Is that money you can funnel in other areas?
Lakeview School District uses what's called a public improvement fund, and that's where we salt money away for things. Hopefully that money would go into that, because once it goes into that, then you use that for capital improvements, and that's what we hope. We use that for example, 4 years ago we did a major renovation to the Riverside. The way you drive in and park, all the asphalt work, that was done with public improvement fund money.
Okay.
So again, a very frugal district, a nice history of being very frugal. So.
Yeah, well, it'd be nice to do that again and take that money and put it there.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck, and if there's any more info we can impart to folks on that, please do let us know.
I will. There's a ton of information I didn't give you, but maybe 1/10 of what it's all about. So a ton of information on our website. Again, we'll be going door to door with our brochures. And if I've got just 1 second, we have 4 community meetings coming up. Tuesday, April 12th at Westlake at 5:30. The 13th, the next day, Wednesday at 5 o'clock at Prairie View.
Okay.
The 27th of April at 5 o'clock at Mingus Brook, and the 28th at Riverside at 5:30. We'll have food, we'll have tours, we'll have all the information for folks just to come by and learn more about this.
Well, and an informed voter is a good one, so we'll look forward to that. And that information is probably on your website.
That's on our website, yes.
All right, Dave Peterson, Lakeview Schools, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll stay in touch.